guys, welcome back to the show. I'm EDC Gunner, and today we have the AK-47 watches. That's right, this is the Vostok Komandirskie. It's one of the best wristwatch values on the planet. It's a solid, highly regarded, and very collectible watch. It's available in more than 70 versions, whether it's manual or automatic wounding. The Komandirskie is an inexpensive treat that's a pleasure to own, but it's also a serious workhorse and an excellent timekeeper. So the Vostok Komandirskie is probably the shy sibling of its Vostok amphibian brother in the eyes of a new watch collectors, and probably in the eyes of a newer Russian watch collectors. But while the Komandirskie may not be quite as glamorous as the amphibian, it has its own interesting history and a strong following among Russian wristwatch fans. One can argue that the Komandirskie is the more famous Vostok wristwatch. It graced its first wrist back in 1965. That means that the Komandirskie is now over 50 years old. There have been many changes over those 50 years, and some of the early versions of the watch are highly collectible. So these early versions, like this one here, have a heavier, more rugged looking case, and they were apparently used by the Soviet military back in the days. So those old originals were apparently a standard issue in the Red Army back in the 60s, and the Zakaz MO SSR versions are the most collectible, especially those with the crown at the 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock position, even though I prefer this traditional look. It looks much more well proportioned. So hopefully you can see this inscription at the bottom of the dial. It says Zakaz MO SSR, and it's a designation that the watch was ordered by the Ministry of Defense of the USSR. Of course, like any vintage collectible, one has to hope that the example you are considering truly is an original and not a reproduction, and the original Zakaz versions of the Komandirskie are very much sought after and prized by collectors, and it's really a true piece of history. And I just want to clarify one more thing, that Zakaz MO order by the Ministry of Defense of the Soviet Union does not mean they were issued to the soldiers, like many people believe, but they were simply available through their watch shops and military surplus stores or whatnot, what was back in those days, and it was available, and I'm sure that many of the soldiers of the Red Army bought it and wore it. Now I'm gonna show you a little bit of a watch, show it around, how to set it, how to use it, and of course I'm gonna put it on my wrist. So first of all, this is a classic Russian case design and Russian classic look of a watch, and if I'm gonna wear Komandirskie, I want it to look like this. There are many modern incarnations. There are like over 70 models of the same watch in different variations, but I think this one is the most classic, and I wouldn't mind having and owning this watch for the rest of my life, and I think it would serve me well, provided it's serviced regularly. Especially this green needle very works well with the indices and the case dial. And I had many Komandirskie watches in the past, but this is one of the most beautiful examples I have ever come across. And the watch, it has bidirectional bezel. That means that the bezel can be turned both ways, and it does not click. Many people, many novice collectors who buy the modern Komandirskies and modern amphibia watches An Amphibia watch is just a more waterproof dive version of this watch. This watch is rated 30-meter water resistant, but I would keep it away from water as much as possible. It can withstand occasional splashes, but in order to preserve such a minty and beautiful example, I would keep it away from water as much as possible. And the watch is really beautiful on the wrist. I will show you that later on, but firstly I'm going to show you the bezel. So it can go both ways. And if you own some modern dive watches, the bezel is usually the unidirectional, and I quite like this one. It's kind of refreshing. Of course, this is not a dive watch, so you don't have that need to have a unidirectional bezel, so it's quite handy. You can time things with bezel, you can time boiling an egg or whatnot, whatever you want, but me personally, I just like to play around with it and turn it and twist it and occasionally time something out. But now I have a bit of a OCD, so I need to return it to its initial position. But yeah, so case back of this watch is beautiful, and let me just show you. There are many versions and case backs of the watches, but some of them are highly decorated and they look nice. Of course, this is a more truer and more original version, and the case back does not have that fancy markings and decorations, which I love so much. But I want to show you something else. This case back is a screw down case back, and it has a special pattern that the Russians came up with that allows the watch to be more waterproof, and this especially works with amphibia watches, which are dive watches, and when the watch goes down and the water pressure hits the back plate, this works against the seal, which is beneath though, and this is the ring that you unscrew, and this is a plate, and the water pressure presses this inside, so it makes the watch even more waterproof and watertight than the conventional Swiss made cases. And right now I want to show you, if you are novice, this is your first Russian watch and this is your first amphibia or Komandirskie, I want to show you how to set it. So this watch is going to Portugal. It's going to our friend Joao, and my good friend gave me this watch to make a video to show him how to set it and how to do it. And I did the review because I love these watches, and I truly think that these are the AK-47 watches because they're rugged, reliable, and if you know anything about AKs, you know that you can pick them out from the sand, from the dirt, from the water, and they will still work, they will still do what they are made to do, and that's the same case with this watch. And the crown on this watch is a screw down crown, but many people who don't know better, they'll argue when you unscrew the crown it kind of wobbles. The crown is wobbly bit, but that's a special design that the Russians came up with that allows the more shock resistance to the watch. So when you pull out the crown it kind of wobbles, and many people think that something's wrong with the watch, but it's just a part of the charm and engineering. So you pull out the crown to the first position and you think, now I'm gonna set the date, but you are not gonna set the date. You need to firstly, in the first position, let me just do it all over again. You need to, this is a manual wound watch, so you open it in the first position. When you unscrew the crown, this is how you wound it. So manually wound watches are very charming, but I personally enjoy wounding them every morning when I wake up. It's my kind of part of a morning ritual. So you need to wound it. Firstly, you need to wound it, and you're gonna wound it all the way to the end, and you will feel slight resistance when the end comes. And these have a I believe 48 hours power reserve, or over 40, so you are good to go. But I think it's a nice practice to. So you see, I felt a little bit of resistance. I don't want to push it all the way out, and that's it. I think it's a cool thing to do every morning if you like watches. So now we want to set the date. So firstly, we want to pull out the crown to the second position, to the second click, and we're gonna move the hands now to the midnight. And how do we know it's a midnight? Well, in the midnight the date changes, and the date changes, it's a midnight, so that's how you know. And you want to set the date as 27th, and now on the watch it says 25th. So now what you want to do, this is the case with all Russian watches, you turn the hands backward until you feel something happens. See, did you notice that? Now you move it again forward to the midnight, and that's the quick set date for the Russian amphibious and Komandirskies. And now we're gonna do it again for the 27th. Backwards. And once this happens, move it again, and it's 27th. So now I'm gonna set it to the correct time. Today is 27th October. It's noon, and I'm gonna set it. It's 12:06, but I'm gonna wait. It's 12:07 now. So 12:07, and you can hack it if you want it, but you don't have to. So it's 12:07. Now we're gonna screw the carefully crown in. There's threads just like a bottle cap, and there you go. The watch is wound, set, and ready to go. Now all is left, I'm gonna put it on my wrist. Now you can see the wrist. I think it looks just lovely with this green NATO band. If you don't know how to set a NATO band, I have a video about that, how to install a NATO strap. But just watch, it's so gorgeous, and truly it is Vostok, Komandirskie, the AK-47 of watches. When I first got into watches, I had a Seiko 5, I got a Komandirskie, and I was over the moon. I wore that thing everywhere, and I wound it, and I was very happy. And that time I coined the term, because of its history, because of the ruggedness, reliability, I coined the term this is the AK-47 of watches, and it truly is, in my opinion. And the watch is beautiful. It's great for casual wear. It has that little bit of a history, and especially if you get a vintage version with this Zakaz MO SSSR inscription, which adds a bit extra cool to that story. And I think truly this is a watch that is significant, has its place in history, it's collectible, and it's purely just a badass watch.